Welcome back to our discussion, Digital Transformation You Can Measure, sponsored by Nobles here on Federal News Network. My guest today is Jim Soltis, Senior Fellow for Federal Civilian Solutions at Nobles. I'm Tom Temin. And before the break, we were talking about a couple of the big use cases for digital transformation. Those included acquisition and the whole aspect of buying, the government to business side, grants, grant making, and these are mentioned in the President's agenda, management agenda. Let's talk about a couple of other possible use cases for digital transformation and what the pieces are you need for those. Situation analysis, broader term that applies to what many agencies do, though, in one form or another. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, so in this instance, we're looking at it from an intelligence analyst viewpoint. So what their job is trying to predict the future. They're looking at trends of data, what's out there in the public, and also some other information that they're gathering, and try to say, hey, we're seeing a trend here. Is there a potential cyber attack on a system or a specific individual or a government? And instead of manually performing that function, a digital transformative solution can really look at collecting and automating the development of trends that can then predict and thereby assist the analyst as they're looking at what's going to happen down the road. If you think about Ukraine and what was going on there, and they're trying to predict all these cyber attacks, a situational analysis solution out there could help accelerate their prediction capabilities.
But is that limited to just cyber attacks?
No, so it's not just cyber attacks. You can look at what's going on with movement of individuals or groups and how they're trying to, not necessarily do a cyber attack, but a terrorist attack.
Sure. And what about the role of, getting back to the data question, of open source data in this whole activity? Traditionally, the intelligence agencies have their own sources and methods, which they don't disclose, proprietary, something that can't be shared. But increasingly, you hear them talking about, and really across the government, open source or even commercially developed information that can help inform these kinds of situational analysis decisions.
Absolutely. So the open source capabilities out there will look at public data and the streams of information that can flow into it. And again, that can be a large amount of information, but using public information, public data, public posts by people that they think nobody's paying attention to, but they're alerting other potential bad actors about what they're planning to do or trying to collaborate together. And you can pull all that information into the collection of data, both private and public, and come up with your predictive capabilities.
And do you find that in your practice that, say, social media posts can be employed in this way?
So tweets, Instagram, whatever that you can find out there, that can be brought into this information as well.
I imagine that it has to be used with care, because a lot of people may rave and rant, but of no account. And yet, what's the one that you got to take seriously? That's the secret sauce here, right?
Right. So that's again where the trending and the prediction capabilities, and using some artificial intelligence to say, hey, are we seeing something here that we've learned from in the past, and can look for behavioral situations to say, hey, this individual or group of individuals is actually serious versus those who are ranting and raving.
And the related use case for digital transformation and the tools there too, cyber assurance. And that's distinguished from situational analysis, correct?
Absolutely. Here, again, with the President's management agenda, it's a high priority. They want to bolster cybersecurity, and at the same point, they want people to use cloud to handle infrastructure, platform, or software solutions. And for those of you who know, there's the FedRAMP program out there, and agencies are required to grant an authority to operate under that FedRAMP program in order for a cloud service provider solution to be used. But many agencies, okay, I've given that authority to operate, but they're not done, right? They actually have to do continuous monitoring in order to assure that just like with my background check, you're going to have to continually monitor and make sure I can continue to have that background check. You have to do the same thing with a cloud solution. So continuous monitoring is a big, important paradigm within the FedRAMP program. And agencies either are doing this manually or maybe not even doing it at all, because it's a lot of work. You have to then track everything, all the logs that are going on with the cloud service provider solution. You have to track it and make sure that you're actually mitigating the risks that you're seeing, that they're closing all of those action items, and that you're tracking it back to all of the solutions that you're using from the different cloud service providers.
Yes, the word telemetry comes up in a lot of agency conversations, telemetrics into what's happening in clouds, what's happening on end user devices, and so on, and what's happening in Internet of Things for that matter too. That were to come into play here?
Yes, especially if you think about IoT or Internet of Things, that increases obviously the amount of data. And with them, it's sort of increasing the edge, because if you think about cloud, you're thinking more of a central controlled area, but with Internet of Things, now you have little mini computers all over the place collecting information and data, and how do you ensure that those are actually secure? Because they could be gateways into bigger and more data that you don't want to be hacked.
All right, so we've talked about a broad range of use cases for digital transformation. Let's get to some of the nitty-gritty of the technical infrastructure an agency needs to be able to support these types of programs.
So we've talked, a little bit about it here in terms of, the, identity management, the zero trust component of it. How do we make sure that these people are who they say they are, that they have access and ability to make edits or even read the data that they're getting access to? So that's a key component of it. Another part of it is not necessarily infrastructure related, but more of agreement, data use agreements and MOUs that you need to have between agencies to say, you can access my data. I'm granting you the right to do that. I'm granting you, and you maybe even have to sign a non-disclosure agreement in order to get access to that data. So when it comes to that, going back to the Chief Data Officer Council, you have to really have ways to expedite the process of sharing that data as in order to make this whole process work.
And I think you mentioned earlier the whole MOU creation, Memorandum of Understanding creation process itself is ripe for transformation, because sometimes they take 6 months of lawyers talking to lawyers to work out something simple.
Yeah, so why can't we start those way in advance, especially as you're creating data, you're going to say, oh, there's going to be organizations, other government agencies that want access to that data. Why not start with, I'm going to set up data use agreements, MOUs ahead of time, put them in a digital solution so that other agencies can say and agree to how they're going to share that data. They can talk about ways to transfer the data to one another, allow edits, allow changes, whatever it is that they want to agree to.
And with respect to cyber assurance and also customer experience, they share one thing in common, and that is the need for two-factor authentication. And are we getting to the point where we can get past the password?
Yes, so one of the good things within government is everybody has what's called a PIV or a CAT card, right? A government ID. And those are easy ways to, hey, I can put this into my computer and that's one part of my authentication, and then there's a PIN associated with that. So I've reduced it now to what I have and what I know in order to gain access. When it comes to the citizen standpoint, it gets a little more difficult, and you still need a password, right, at this point. But once we get to allowing some type of biometric with the citizen and get through all the challenges that I'm sure we're going to have with that, then it could reduce the need to know your password.
Because devices also have unique identifiers. Cell phones, government-issued equipment, PCs all have a unique serial number that's embedded in there. So that could also be almost like a CAT card.
It could be, and then there's apps on top of those that you can put on your cell phone or your iPhone or whatever it is, such as Okta or Duo, where you can get that two-factor authentication through an app, and it's pushed to you and say, yeah, I approve, this is me, and confirm or you are who you are.
So it's always something you've got and something you know. It's just a matter of what those things are.
Right.
That can make some friction go away there.
Yes.
Got it. And let's talk about the metrics for success here. Well, even before we talk about that, let's briefly discuss, I'm an agency program manager, I'm a deputy secretary or deputy secretary for management, that level, senior executive, lower level political appointee. How do you know what is the best place that's ripe for transformation?
So any place that your customer satisfaction or citizen satisfaction scores are low, right? That's where I would start. So looking at those, and then how do I, if I can find a digital solution commercially available, would be potentially the fastest way to go versus trying to custom build something. Then I can then measure whether or not I've increased my customer satisfaction scores or citizen satisfaction scores once I've implemented it.
I guess you could also ask your employees. For example, we talked about the IRS earlier, and they have this big paper blob that has to be looked at, millions and millions and millions of sheets, as opposed to the electronic returns. Now they're talking about just the simplicity of a barcode or a QR code added to those sheets could somehow transform the processing of paper itself.
Absolutely, and with that, as we mentioned before, it's not just government to citizen, but within an agency, how can we help look at ways to make my employees more effective? And having that QR code is obviously one way to go. Other ways are, how do I make it so that as an employee I can work remotely in a secure manner? Am I actually more engaged with the applications that the agency is putting out there? Am I able to do my job more efficiently, through some dashboard metrics that executives can look at as a program manager and say, look, we're able to process this many more forms, for instance, at the IRS than we used to.
So sometimes the answer is right under your own nose.
Exactly.
And let's talk finally about some of the metrics for success, because appropriators, agency leadership, the OMB, they want to measure what you've done. They want proof of what you've done is worthwhile.
Yeah, so we've talked about it a little bit. First thing is, from a citizen standpoint, am I able to get answers quicker than I used to, right? Do I have to sit on the phone for hours, or can I go online and talk with somebody quicker, or can find the information at my fingertips? Those are quick ways to measure success.
Or will they call me back in an hour?
Or call me back. Right. I would expect, it's a lot easier to get an answer online than it is to get a human to call you back. And then when it comes to government to business, am I able to process, for instance, grants or acquisitions faster than I used to with less delay? Are the solutions that are being provided actually better than, in improving my efficiency as a government agency now that I have acquired this services from this specific business? And within an agency, again, looking at, am I able to do my job better?
All right. Well, thank you for demystifying something that gets a lot of mystery around it, digital transformation. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Tom.
We've been speaking with Jim Soltis, a Senior Fellow for Federal Civilian Solutions at Noblus. I'm Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. For more information, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Noblus.